Seattle in early winter always carries a cold, almost unreal beauty. The fog drifts lazily like old cigarette smoke, clinging to the tall glass skyscrapers, blurring the pale yellow neon lights. The rain never truly stops. It just shifts from heavy downpours to a fine mist, then back to heavy again. I often think Seattle is like an ink wash painting someone forgot in the freezer. Beautiful, but bone-chilling. My name is Emily Carter. I'm 26 years old, living alone in a tiny studio apartment in Capitol Hill. The apartment has one main room, a minuscule kitchen corner, and a large window overlooking a steep street. I work as a freelance illustrator, mostly children's books, magazine covers, and occasionally personal pieces that no one buys. My life is so quiet that sometimes I wonder if I truly exist or if I'm just a faint shadow in this city's landscape. Until Daniel Whitmore appeared. I met him for the first time at a small art exhibition in Pioneer Square, an old space with red brick walls and the faint smell of damp wood. The exhibition wasn't crowded. Maybe 30 people wandering past the paintings. I stood in a corner, holding a cheap glass of wine, pretending to observe everyone while really just trying not to feel out of place. Then I saw him. He was tall, broad-shouldered, dressed in a perfectly tailored black suit, dark hair neatly cropped. He stood in front of my largest painting, a small girl standing under a Seattle rain, umbrella tilted, eyes gazing toward the distant place where the street dissolved into fog. He stood there for a very long time, motionless, as if reading a book written in a language only he understood. Finally, he turned to me. His voice was low and measured. "Did you paint this from memory?" I startled. No one had ever asked me that. I nodded, a little embarrassed. "Yes. How did you know?" He gave a faint smile, a fleeting one, no teeth showing, but enough to make my heart skip a beat. I can see the longing in every brushstroke. "You didn't paint the rain to describe the weather. You painted it to hide something." I didn't know how to respond. We talked for a few more minutes about art, about Seattle, about endless rainy days. He introduced himself as Daniel Whitmore, working in biotechnology. I laughed and said it sounded very serious. He just nodded, eyes distant. Sometimes being serious is the only way to survive. That was our first conversation, just a few short sentences. But when he left, I stood watching his silhouette disappear behind the glass door, wondering why I had the strange feeling he had been looking at me for a very long time before that night. 3 months later, he proposed. We didn't meet often, a dinner here, a coffee there. Once he unexpectedly appeared at my studio door with a bouquet of white chrysanthemums because he was passing by. He wasn't romantic in the usual way. No red roses, no long declarations under the rain, but he always appeared exactly when I needed him most. When I had the flu, he brought porridge and medicine. When I pulled all-nighters for deadlines, he sat quietly beside me reading, asking nothing. I hesitated a lot. Daniel rarely talked about himself. I knew he was wealthy, knew his company was leading in gene editing technology, knew the press called him Seattle's emotionless man. But I didn't know what he liked to eat on Sunday mornings, didn't know what he dreamed of as a child, didn't know why his eyes sometimes looked at me as if I were something very fragile, very breakable. I asked him once, when we were sitting on the sofa in my apartment, rain tapping steadily against the window, "Why me? I'm nothing special." He looked at me for a very long time. "You are. You paint rain when others only see wetness. You look at the world with fearless eyes. And you are lonely the same way I am." I fell silent, then nodded. The wedding was quiet, only about a dozen people. His family, a sister in Portland, and a few distant relatives attended. No one asked me too many questions. Afterward, I moved into his mansion on the outskirts, where the pine forest begins to creep into the city and the lake lies still, reflecting the gray sky. The house was breathtakingly beautiful. Huge glass walls, dark oak floors, minimalist furniture in shades of gray and white. But the longer I lived there, the more I realized it wasn't really a home, it felt more like a fortress. The windows had thin, bulletproof glass, hidden cameras everywhere, and doors that closed with discreet finality. The first week, I began noticing small things. First was Daniel's nighttime habit. Around 1 or 2 in the morning, I would wake suddenly because the bed beside me was cold. He was gone. I lay still, listening to the wind slipping through window cracks, the rustle of pine needles outside. Near dawn he would return, silent as a ghost, slipping back beside me without a word. The faint scent of rain and pine clung to his clothes. When I asked, he only said, "I had something to take care of." No further explanation. Second was the room in the second-floor hallway. Dark wood door, modern electronic lock, always closed. Once I passed by and my hand unconsciously touched the handle. Daniel appeared behind me, voice calm. "Old study. Nothing interesting." But his eyes, they flickered for just a second. I noticed. He was hiding something. Third and the most unsettling was the way he looked at me. There were moments he sat across from me at breakfast, coffee cup in hand, staring without blinking for a very long time. Not admiring, more like checking, confirming I was still there, still breathing, still safe. That gaze made my skin prickle. Then came the big rain night, the night everything changed. The rain hammered the glass like thousands of fingers drumming frantically. I woke in the middle of the night, the bed empty again. Daniel was gone. Wind howled through the cracks, making the curtains sway. I sat up, heart racing for no clear reason. Then I heard it very faint from downstairs. Footsteps, slow and careful, or metal brushing lightly against wood. I slipped on my wool robe and stepped into the hallway. The house was pitch dark, only dim night lights along the corridor. I passed the locked room and my heart nearly stopped. The door was ajar, just a thin crack, but enough for warm yellow light to spill onto the floor. I stood frozen, hand trembling on the handle. Part of me wanted to turn back, pretend I saw nothing, but the other part, curiosity, fear, exhaustion with secrets, pushed me forward. Inside, the room glowed with soft desk lamp light, and then I froze. On the walls, on the desk, pinned across a large corkboard, hundreds of photographs of me, photos from college, me sketching under an oak tree on the NYU campus, me sitting in my usual Brooklyn cafe, holding a latte, staring out at the rain, me walking in Central Park, hair wet, clutching a sketch pad, me standing under the subway station awning, waiting for a late train, neon lights reflecting on my tired face, some of them from 8 years ago. My heart pounded so hard it hurt. My hands were ice cold as I touched a thick file on the desk. I opened it. Inside were my daily schedules. The time I left home, the cafes I frequented, the routes I walked, even receipts from coffee I paid with my card. And one name circled in red over and over, the pen strokes so forceful they tore the paper. Lucas Grant. Right then, a low, familiar voice came from behind me. Emily. I spun around. Daniel stood in the doorway. For the first time, I saw real panic in his eyes. They were wide, lips pressed tight, hand gripping the frame as if to steady himself. Are you stalking me? My voice trembled, barely a whisper. He was silent for several long seconds. Then he stepped closer, slowly, as if afraid I'd bolt. No. He stopped just one step away. I was protecting you. I shook my head, tears starting to spill. These photos, these schedules, you knew everything about me. From 8 years ago. How can you call that protection? Daniel opened an iron cabinet in the corner, pulled out a thick dossier, and set it on the desk. His voice was steady, but heavy. Emily, do you remember 8 years ago in New York when you were a witness in a case? The memory crashed over me like an old nightmare. I was 18, a freshman at NYU. One late October night, walking back to the dorm after a group study session, I passed an alley near a bar in the Lower East Side. I heard shouting, the sound of a fight. I froze in the shadows, heart hammering. Then I saw a middle-aged man being stabbed. The attacker turned, and his eyes met mine for 1 second. I ran. I called the police. Thanks to my statement, even though it was vague, they caught him. His name was Lucas Grant, a notorious arms dealer with ties to international crime syndicates. He was arrested, I whispered. Daniel looked straight into my eyes. He escaped prison 2 years ago, and since then, he's been hunting you. My whole body went cold. The air in the room felt thick and suffocating. He keeps a list. Everyone who helped put him away. You're at the top. I stared at my husband, the man I had married 3 months earlier, like a stranger. Then who are you really? He sighed, pulled an ID card from his inside pocket. My hands shook as I took it. It read, Federal Bureau of Investigation, Daniel Whitmore, Senior Intelligence Agent. I went numb. I was assigned to track Lucas Grant after his escape, he continued, voice lower. During the investigation, I discovered he was targeting old witnesses. You were his priority. I was ordered to approach you, monitor from a distance, but distance was too dangerous. So I chose to get closer. I looked at the photos on the wall. These pictures. He gave the saddest smile I'd ever seen. I took them to make sure you were always safe. To know where you went, who you met, if there were any danger signs. At first, it was just the job. Then it became habit. Then it became fear. Tears streamed down my face uncontrollably. And our marriage? He was silent for a long time. Then he looked straight into my eyes. Voice hoarse. At first, yes. It was to protect you more closely. I thought if I was beside you, I could react faster if Lucas came near. But then I realized I didn't want to leave you anymore, even if the mission ended. Even if Lucas was caught again, I still wanted to stay. I didn't know what to say. My heart ached, fear, anger, hurt, and something I didn't dare name all tangled together. Right then, the alarm in the room blared sharp, urgent. Daniel spun to the computer screen. A red dot blinked on the satellite map. Location: less than 2 miles from the house. He muttered a curse I'd never heard him say. Lucas is in Seattle. I trembled. Where is he? He looked out the window. Rain poured relentlessly, darkness swallowing everything outside. Very close, he's moving this way. He turned back, gripped my hand. His palm was warm, but the squeeze was almost painful. Stay here. Lock the door. Don't open for anyone. I'll handle it. But I shook my head. No, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. I don't want to sit and wait while you go out alone. If he's coming for me, then I need to be there too. He looked at me, surprise flashing in his eyes, then softening. Emily, I know, but for 8 years you carried this alone. Now it's my turn. He was silent, then nodded. We went downstairs. Daniel opened a safe, took out a handgun, checked the magazine, then handed me a smaller, lighter one. Have you ever fired a gun? No, but I'll learn now. He quickly taught me how to hold it, chamber around, aim. My hands shook, but I tried to stay calm. Then the doorbell rang, not the normal chime. It was the secondary alarm. Someone had breached the outer fence security. Daniel checked the camera feed. A black car parked at the gate. A man stepped out, wearing a long gray coat, hood up. He looked straight into the camera, as if he knew we were watching. The smile on his lips was cold, patient. Daniel whispered, "He's here." We stood in the dark living room. Rain kept falling. Slow footsteps echoed on the porch. Then a knock light, polite, like a guest paying a visit. Daniel signaled me to stay behind him. He moved to the door, gun ready. Another knock. Then a low, raspy voice from outside. "Emily Carter. I know you're in there. I just want to talk. 8 years. You owe me an explanation." My heart thundered. Daniel whispered, "Don't answer." But I stepped forward, voice shaking but trying to hold firm. "I don't owe you anything, Lucas. You killed someone. I only told the truth." Silence for a moment. Then he chuckled softly. "You told the truth, and that truth cost me 8 years. Now I've come to collect." Daniel opened the door, not fully, just a crack wide enough to see. Lucas stood there, a few meters away, rain soaking his coat. He held no visible weapon, but I knew he was deadly. "Whitmore," he said, voice mocking. "I've known about you for a long time. The FBI's best agent, but you can't protect her forever." Daniel's voice was ice. "You're wrong. I'm not protecting her because of a mission anymore. I'm protecting her because she's my wife." Lucas laughed loudly. "Wife? How touching. But does she know you've been watching her since she was 18? That you photographed her like prey?" I stepped forward, standing beside Daniel. "I know everything," I said. "And I still choose to be here. With him." Lucas looked at me. His smile faded. Then, "What a pity." And he drew his gun in a flash. Daniel shoved me to the floor, firing back instantly. Gunshots cracked through the rainy night. The exchange was brief but ferocious. Daniel took a bullet in the shoulder. Blood bloomed across his shirt. Lucas staggered, clutching his stomach, but still tried to fire again. I didn't think. I lifted the gun Daniel had given me, aimed at his leg, and pulled the trigger. He fell. Daniel lunged forward, subdued him, secured his wrists with spare cable ties. Then he turned back and pulled me into his arms. "Are you okay?" I nodded, tears mixing with rain. "You're hurt." "It's nothing. Just a graze." Police and Daniel's backup team arrived minutes later. Lucas was taken away. Daniel got temporary bandaging. We sat on the porch steps, rain still falling, but it no longer felt terrifying. He held my hand. "I'm sorry. For all the secrets. For making you face him." I leaned my head on his shoulder. "I don't blame you. I'm just glad everything is finally clear." He kissed my hair. "No more secrets from now on, I promise." I smiled for the first time that night. "I promise too. We'll start over. For real." Outside, the Seattle rain continued. But this time, it wasn't a rain that hid fear. It was a rain that washed the past clean, and we, at last, were together not because of duty, not because of protection, but because of love, real love, real love, real love, real love. Here's the English translation of the thank you message you wrote after the story. I've kept the warm, personal, and emotional tone intact, making it sound natural in English, as if it were originally written that way. Thank you all so much for listening to the story The Mysterious Husband right until the very last moment. As I finish telling it, I feel strangely light and warm inside. Thank you for taking the time to sit quietly, following every small detail from the endless Seattle rains, the secret photos pinned across the walls, to the moment Emily picks up the gun and chooses to step out beside Daniel instead of hiding in the shadows. You didn't just listen. You walked with Emily through her fear, her doubt, and finally her acceptance and love. That truly touches me. This story isn't just a mix of romance and suspense, it's a journey about trust, about learning to forgive secrets that were kept for reasons far bigger than ourselves. I hope that after hearing it, you, like me, pause for a moment to think about the important people in your own life. Is there someone quietly protecting you without you ever knowing? Do you have the courage to step out of your comfort zone, face the truth, and still choose to stay by their side? The biggest lesson I took from this story, and I hope you feel it too, is this. True love doesn't always start pure and perfect. Sometimes it begins from duty, from the fear of losing someone, and only later blooms into something real and sincere. Secrets can hurt deeply, but if they were kept to protect someone, they deserve to be heard and understood rather than quickly judged. Don't be afraid to face the darkness, because it's in that darkness that we truly see the light of the person standing next to us. And finally, when you choose to love completely, even when you know their past isn't flawless, even when the future is full of uncertainty. Thank you again, from the bottom of my heart, for giving me the chance to share such a long, emotional story like this with you. If, after hearing it, you'd like to share your thoughts, ask me to tell another story, or even want to change the ending for Emily and Daniel, just say the word. I'm always here, ready to sit down with you and continue these stories. Thank you so much. With love and gratitude,